The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest room ever built by any species in the known universe. It floated in space, attached to nothing, held in place by machines that bent gravity itself. The walls were made of a clear material that showed the stars in every direction. 10,000 seats rose in circles around a central platform, and in those seats sat the representatives of 300 alien species. Sam had walked into this room many times over the past 15 years. He was the human ambassador to the Galactic Council, and he had spent those years asking, requesting, begging, and negotiating. Today would be different. Today, he would do none of those things. He stood at the entrance and looked at his aide, a young woman named. She was 32 years old with short brown hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had worked with Sam for 7 years, and she knew him better than anyone. "The ships are ready," she said quietly. "Admiral Caldwell confirmed it 10 minutes ago." Sam nodded slowly. "And Earth?" "President Gibson gave final authorization 1 hour ago. Everything is in position." Sam took a deep breath. 300 years of planning came down to this moment. He was 63 years old, and he had spent his entire adult life preparing for what he was about to do. His father had worked on the secret programs. His grandfather had helped design them. 4 generations had kept the faith, waiting for the day when humanity would finally stand up. He walked into the chamber. The noise hit him like a wave. Thousands of alien voices speaking hundreds of languages filled the air. Translation devices worked hard to turn everything into something understandable, creating a constant hum of words and meaning. Sam walked down the long path toward the human section, a small area near the back of the room where humanity had been placed when they first joined the council. They watched him from their elevated thrones near the center. They were tall beings with 4 arms and skin the color of dark copper. Their eyes were large and golden, and they looked down at every other species with the calm certainty of those who had ruled for millions of years. High Chancellor, their leader, sat on the highest throne. He was ancient even by standards, over 12,000 years old, and he had led the council for the past 3,000. The crystalline floated in their anti-gravity chairs, their bodies made of living crystal that hummed with internal light. They were the scientists of the galaxy, keepers of technology, and they guarded their knowledge carefully. 7, their ambassador, watched Sam with what might have been curiosity. They filled an entire section with their large bodies. They had 6 legs, 4 arms, and heads covered in eyes that saw in every direction. They clicked and buzzed among themselves, their mandibles moving constantly. The council had never trusted them with real power, and so they sat and waited, generation after generation. Sam reached his seat and sat down. Sat beside him, placing a small device on the desk in front of them. It looked like nothing special, just a standard data pad. But it contained everything humanity had built in secret for 300 years. The session began with the usual rituals. Ancient words were spoken in ancient languages. Lights flickered in patterns that meant something to species who had been part of the council since before humans had discovered fire. Then came the matter of the Andromeda Corridor. High Chancellor rose from his throne, his 4 arms spread wide in the gesture that meant he was about to deliver judgment. His voice was deep and slow, translated perfectly by the devices every delegate wore. The Council has considered the request from the human delegation regarding colonization rights in the Andromeda Corridor. After careful review of all factors, including resource allocation, strategic positioning, and developmental readiness, the Council has determined that the request must be. Sam did not react. He had expected this. It was the 17th time humanity had asked for permission to expand into empty space, and it was the 17th time they had been told no. Continued. The human species has shown remarkable progress in the 3 centuries since their admission to the galactic community. However, they remain a young race, impulsive and prone to conflict. The Council believes it would be unwise to allow such rapid expansion at this time. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, when humanity has demonstrated greater maturity, this matter can be revisited. Laughter rippled through parts of the chamber. Some of it came from the section. Some came from species whose names humans had never bothered to learn, because they had made it clear from the beginning that humans were beneath their notice. His hand tightened on the data pad. Sam placed his hand gently on her arm. "Not yet," he whispered. "Let them have their moment." The laughter continued for a while longer, then raised one of his hands and silence fell. "Does the human delegation have any response?" Sam stood slowly. He was not a tall man, and his hair had gone gray years ago. He looked like what he was, an ordinary human being. There was nothing special about him compared to the giants and crystals and insects that surrounded him. But when he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the chamber. "The human delegation thanks the Council for its consideration," he said. "We have learned much in our time here. 300 years ago, we came to this chamber as newcomers, eager to learn, eager to grow, eager to take our place among the stars. We believed that the Council existed to help all species reach their potential." He paused and looked around the room. "We were wrong." The chamber went very quiet. "We have learned that the Council does not exist to help anyone. It exists to maintain the power of those who already have it. It exists to keep young species weak and old species strong. It exists to make sure that nothing ever changes." Leaned forward on his throne. "Ambassador, you are speaking out of turn. Such statements are not appropriate for this chamber." Sam smiled. It was a strange smile, one that had no warmth in it at all. "I am not finished, High Chancellor. I have sat in this room for 15 years. I have watched species beg for scraps while others took whatever they wanted. I have seen the rules applied one way for some and another way for others. I have listened to endless talk about fairness and cooperation while witnessing neither." He turned to look at the human section, at the small group of men and women who represented a species of 12 billion souls. "Today that ends." Pressed a button on the data pad. Across the galaxy, signals traveled at speeds faster than light. Sam straightened his back and spoke the words that would change everything. "On behalf of the United Human Government, I hereby announce that humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We are no longer asking for permission. We are no longer waiting for approval. We are no longer members of this body." The chamber exploded into noise. Stood from his throne, his golden eyes wide. The stopped humming. The clicked and buzzed in sudden confusion. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, 10,000 human ships powered up their engines and prepared for whatever would come next. The day humanity left the Galactic Council had begun. The noise in the chamber was like nothing Sam had ever heard. 300 species shouted at once. Translation devices struggled to keep up with the flood of words. Some delegates stood from their seats. Others activated communication devices to contact their home worlds. The guards around the edges of the room moved closer to the center, their hands on weapons. High Chancellor raised all 4 of his arms and shouted for silence. It took nearly 5 minutes for the room to calm down enough for him to speak. "This is not possible," said, his voice shaking with barely controlled anger. "No species has ever left the Galactic Council. It is not permitted. It is not done. The Council exists to maintain order in the galaxy, and that order requires the participation of all member species." Sam remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back. "The Council exists because its members choose to be part of it. Humanity chooses differently." 7. The ambassador floated forward in her anti-gravity chair. Her crystalline body flickered with colors that the translation devices interpreted as confusion and concern. "Ambassador, you must understand the situation you have created. A species that leaves the Council loses all protections. Your trade agreements become void. Your borders become unrecognized. Any other species may claim your worlds without consequence. Sam nodded slowly. We understand completely. We have prepared for this. A delegate rose, his many eyes focusing on Sam. Prepared how? Humanity has no fleet capable of defending itself. Your technology is 3 centuries behind the youngest council members. You have no allies, no resources, no means of survival outside the council's protection. Pressed another button on her data pad. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, visible from every seat in the room. Actually, Sam said, we have been quite busy. The display showed space. Empty space according to every map in the galaxy. But as the view zoomed in, shapes began to appear. Ship after ship emerged from the darkness, their hulls reflecting starlight. Cruisers, carriers, destroyers, and vessels that did not match any known design. They filled the display until counting them became impossible. The human sovereignty fleet, Sam said calmly. 10,412 vessels, ranging from patrol craft to full battleships, built over the past 50 years in locations outside Council survey zones. The chamber fell silent again. This time the silence was different. This time it was the silence of fear. Pressed another button. The display changed to show a network of stations positioned around the edges of human space. They were massive, each one larger than most planets. The Prometheus Array, a defensive network capable of generating energy barriers across entire star systems. We have 47 stations operational, with another 20 under construction. His golden eyes had gone very wide. This is impossible. The resources required for such construction would be enormous. Our sensors would have detected the energy signatures. Our monitors would have reported unusual activity. Sam smiled that cold smile again. Your sensors work very well, High Chancellor. They detect exactly what we want them to detect. 50 years ago, our scientists developed a method of hiding energy signatures. We have been using it ever since. But the resources, Seven insisted. Where did you obtain the materials? From asteroids and moons in systems you considered worthless. From deep space mining operations you never knew existed. From trade with species who were not council members and therefore not under your observation. The delegate clicked his mandibles rapidly. You deceived us, all of you, for 50 years. Sam turned to face him. We protected ourselves. The council made it clear from the beginning that humanity would never be allowed to grow. Every expansion request was. Every technology we developed was restricted. Every ship we built was questioned. You left us no choice but to act in secret. This is a betrayal of everything the Council stands for, declared. This is an act of aggression against the galactic community. No, Sam said firmly. This is an act of survival. We have not threatened anyone. We have not attacked anyone. We have simply built the means to defend ourselves and announced our intention to govern our own affairs. If that is aggression, then the word has lost all meaning. Pressed a final button. The display changed once more, showing star maps with routes marked in bright lines. As of 6 hours ago, 17 colony ships left human space. They are traveling to star systems outside Council territory, systems that have never been claimed by any species. By the time you receive this message, they will be beyond your reach. The implications settled over the chamber like a heavy weight. Humanity had not simply left the Council. They had broken every assumption the galactic community held about the young species from the unremarkable planet called Earth. Admiral Nick Caldwell stood on the bridge of the flagship Defiance, watching the transmission from the Council chamber. He was a tall man with gray eyes and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He had spent 30 years in the human military, the last 20 building the fleet that now waited in the darkness. All ships confirm ready status, his first officer reported. Good, Caldwell said. Maintain positions. We do not fire unless fired upon. Make sure every captain understands that order." "Yes, sir." Caldwell watched the display showing the council chamber. He could see the fear on the faces of the alien delegates, the confusion in their movements. For 300 years, humanity had been dismissed as children playing in the garden of their betters. Today, those children had shown they had teeth. In the council chamber was speaking rapidly with his advisors. Other delegations had formed small groups, whispering in their own languages. They had gone very still, which was unusual for a species that normally never stopped moving. Finally turned back to face Sam. "The Council demands that humanity return to its proper place. Dismantle your fleet. Disable your defensive systems. Return your colony ships. If you comply within 30 standard days, this matter can be forgotten." Sam shook his head slowly. "I do not think you understand, High Chancellor. We are not asking for forgiveness. We are not requesting permission. We are informing you of facts. Humanity has left the Council. Humanity is now a sovereign power. You may accept this reality or deny it, but you cannot change it." "Then there will be consequences," said, his voice hard. "Yes," Sam agreed. "There will be, but I think you will find that the consequences will not be what you expect." He picked up the data pad and began walking toward the exit, fell into step beside him. The human delegation rose from their seats and followed. As they reached the door, Sam paused and turned back to face the chamber one last time. 300 years ago, humanity looked up at the stars and dreamed of wonders. We joined the council hopping to find partners in that dream. Instead, we found jailers who feared what we might become. Today, we walk out of the prison you built for us. Tomorrow, we start building something new. He walked through the door and did not look back. The universe held its breath and waited to see what would happen next. The weeks that followed humanity's departure from the Galactic Council were filled with tension and fear. News of what had happened in the Great Chamber spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Species that had never paid attention to the small planet called Earth suddenly wanted to know everything about its people. On the Council's capital station, emergency meetings ran day and night, called for unity. He spoke of the danger that humanity represented. He reminded the delegates of the ancient laws that kept order in the galaxy. He demanded action. The military command sent scout ships to the borders of human space. They expected to find a primitive fleet, perhaps larger than they had realized, but nothing that could stand against the might of a species that had traveled between stars for 12 million years. They found something very different. The first scout group consisted of 12 fast ships, each one capable of crossing half the galaxy in a matter of weeks. They approached human space from different directions, expecting to map defensive positions and identify weaknesses. None of them came back. The second scout group was larger, 50 ships with heavy weapons and the best sensors they could build. They approached more carefully, staying at maximum range while they tried to understand what they were facing. They found their sensors unable to penetrate human space. Something was blocking them, something that created a wall of static across every frequency they tried. When they moved closer to get better readings, human ships appeared from nowhere and surrounded them. Admiral Caldwell spoke to them directly, his face appearing on their screens. "You have entered human sovereignty territory without permission. You have 30 seconds to reverse course. If you remain, we will consider you hostile." The commander was old and proud. He had fought in wars across half the galaxy. He had never retreated from anything. "We are ships of the Galactic Council," he said. "We go where we choose." 20 seconds. "Your threats mean nothing. Our weapons are far superior to anything you could build." 10 seconds. The commander ordered his ships to hold position. He would not be frightened by primitives. When the human ships opened fire, the battle lasted less than a minute. Shields, the finest in the galaxy, failed against weapons that should not have existed. Armor, tested against every known force, melted like ice in a furnace. 30 ships were destroyed before the commander ordered retreat. Only 18 made it out of human space. The news hit the council like a bomb. For the first time in 12 million years, they had been defeated in battle, and not by some ancient rival with equal technology, but by a species that had been considered barely worth noticing just weeks before. On Earth, President Laura Gibson addressed the unified human government. She was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and a calm voice that had seen humanity through many crises. "Citizens of the human sovereignty," she said, "today we stand at a crossroads. The Council has sent forces against us and we have turned them back, but this is not the end. It is only the beginning." She spoke of the sacrifices that had made this moment possible. Scientists who had worked in secret labs for decades, workers who had built ships in hidden facilities, soldiers who had trained for a war they hoped would never come, ordinary people who had kept quiet about what they knew, trusting that someday their patience would be rewarded. "We did not choose this path lightly," Gibson said. "For 300 years we tried to work within the system. We followed the rules. We asked politely. We accepted denial after denial. But there comes a point when accepting unfairness becomes the same as supporting it. We reached that point and we chose to walk away." In his laboratory deep beneath the surface of Mars, Dr. Ben Torres watched the broadcast with tired eyes. He was 71 years old, and he had spent 50 of those years working on the technologies that had made humanity's rebellion possible. His daughter stood beside him. She was 35, a physicist in her own right, and she had helped develop the weapons that had destroyed the Scouts. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked. Ben was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the screens around him, showing data from sensors across human space. He looked at the reports of ships moving into defensive positions. He looked at the messages from colonies 17 star systems away, confirming that they had arrived safely. "I think we did the necessary thing," he said finally. "Whether it was right or not, history will decide." "That is not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It is not, but it is the truth." The Council continued its debates, demanded a full military response. He called for every ship in the fleet to gather at the border of human space. He spoke of teaching humanity a lesson that would never be forgotten. But others were not so certain. The ambassador sent a private message to human space, requesting a meeting. She arrived alone in a small ship with no weapons, and she met with Sam in a station on the edge of contested territory. "Your species has surprised us," Seven said. "In 12 million years, no one has ever done what you have done." "We had no choice," Sam replied. "Perhaps, but I am not here to debate the past. I am here to discuss the future." She paused, her crystalline body flickering with colors that suggested deep thought. "The Council has controlled the galaxy for a very long time. It has maintained order, yes, but it has also maintained inequality. Species that arrived early gained advantages that they have never given up. Species that arrived late have been kept in their place." Sam nodded. "We noticed. What you have done has opened a crack in that system. Other species are watching. Some are beginning to ask questions they have never asked before." Seven leaned forward. "They would like to establish separate relations with the human sovereignty, trade agreements, technology exchanges, perhaps in time something more formal." Sam considered this carefully. The Council would not approve. "The Council does not need to know, not yet." It was the first crack in the wall that the Council had built around itself. Over the following months, more cracks appeared. They sent their own envoys, quietly asking about trade. 3 smaller species requested permission to send observers to human space. Even some, younger ones who had grown tired of their elders' arrogance, reached out through back channels. Humanity had not just left the Council. They had shown that leaving was possible. And in a galaxy where nothing had changed for millions of years, that was the most dangerous idea of all. Admiral Caldwell maintained his watch on the border. More council ships appeared from time to time, testing the defenses, probing for weaknesses. None of them found what they were looking for, and with each failure, the legend of human power grew. In the quiet of his office, Sam read the reports and wondered what would come next. Humanity had taken its first steps as a free species, but the journey was only beginning, and the road ahead was long and uncertain. The universe was changing, and humanity was at the center of that change. 5 years passed after humanity's departure from the Galactic Council. In that time, the galaxy changed in ways that no one had predicted. The human sovereignty grew stronger with each passing month. The colony ships that had left on that first day had established 17 new worlds, and more were being settled every year. Human technology continued to advance, no longer held back by council restrictions. Human ships traveled to regions of space that had never been mapped, finding resources and wonders that had waited for millions of years. Sam had been promoted to Secretary of Interstellar Affairs. It was a fancy title for a simple job. He was the person who talked to aliens, and in the past 5 years, a lot of aliens had wanted to talk. Worked beside him, now holding the title of Chief Diplomatic Advisor. She had grown from a young aide into one of the most important people in the human government. Leaders from dozens of species asked for her by name when they wanted to negotiate. They sat together in a conference room on Station Alpha, the diplomatic hub of the human sovereignty. Through the windows, they could see ships arriving from across the galaxy. Some flew the flags of council members. Others belonged to species that had never been part of the council at all. 37 species, said, looking at her data pad. 37 species have requested some form of relationship with us. Trade agreements, technology exchanges, mutual defense pacts. Some want all three. Sam leaned back in his chair. What do they want? They want observer status, full diplomatic recognition, and they want to know if we would be interested in a formal alliance. This was not a small thing. They were one of the largest species in the galaxy, with populations on hundreds of worlds. They had been council members since before humans had developed writing, but they had always been treated as second-class citizens, their size and numbers seen as threats rather than assets. What do they offer in return? Sam asked. Access to their industrial capacity. They can build ships faster than anyone else in the galaxy. They are offering to help us expand our fleet in exchange for protection and equal treatment. Sam thought about this for a long time. An alliance with them would change everything. It would turn the human sovereignty from a single species rebellion into something much larger. It would make the council's position even weaker. Set up a meeting, he said finally, but make it clear that we are not looking for subjects or servants. If they want to work with us, they work with us as equals, nothing less. Nodded and began sending messages. On the council's capital station, High Chancellor watched his empire crumble. They had stopped attending full council sessions, sending junior representatives instead. They had become openly defiant, their delegates asking questions that no one had dared ask before. 3 smaller species had formally withdrawn, following humanity's example. Called an emergency meeting of the High Command. They gathered in a room that had seen 1,000 such meetings over millions of years. But this time, the mood was different. This time, there was fear. We must act now, said. Every day we wait, humanity grows stronger. Every day, more species question our authority. If we do not respond with force, the council will collapse. His military commander, a general named Hex, shook his head slowly. We have tested their defenses 17 times. Each time we have failed. Their weapons are stronger than ours. Their ships are faster. Their tactics are unpredictable. Then we must attack with everything we have. A full fleet action. Every ship we can gather. Hex looked at his leader with something that might have been pity. High Chancellor, I have served for 8,000 years. I have fought in wars against species that no longer exist. I know what victory looks like, and I know what defeat looks like. If we attack the humans with our full fleet and lose, we will have nothing left. The species that have stayed loyal will see our weakness and abandon us. The council will end not with a whisper but with a roar. Slammed his 4 hands on the table. Then, what do you suggest? That we do nothing while everything our ancestors built falls apart. The general was quiet for a moment. I suggest that we accept reality. Humanity is no longer a junior species that we can control. They are a power equal to any in the galaxy. We can fight them and probably lose, or we can find a way to live with them. The words hung in the air like poison, stared at his general with disbelief. In 12 million years, no had ever spoken of peace with an inferior species. It was unthinkable. But as the silence stretched on, other voices in the room began to murmur agreement. On the border between human space and council territory, Admiral Caldwell received intelligence reports from Tony Martinez, his chief spy. Martinez was a quiet man with forgettable features, the kind of person that no one noticed until it was too late. He had spent 20 years building a network of informants across the galaxy, and his information was always accurate. They are debating war, Martinez said. Wants to attack. His generals are not sure. The vote could go either way. Caldwell studied the reports. What is your assessment? I think they will vote against war. They have lost too many ships already, and they know our defenses are only getting stronger. But is old and proud. If he feels pushed into a corner, he might do something desperate. Then we need to give him a way out that does not look like surrender. Caldwell thought about this for a while. Then he picked up a communication device and contacted Sam. Secretary, I have an idea. The proposal that emerged was simple. Humanity would not demand any apology or admission of wrongdoing from the Council. They would not ask for territory or resources. All they wanted was recognition. The Council would formally acknowledge the human sovereignty as an independent power with the right to govern its own affairs. In exchange, humanity would guarantee that they had no interest in conquest. They would not attack Council space. They would not try to recruit species away from the Council. They would simply exist peacefully as neighbors. It was not the war that wanted, but it was also not the complete surrender that he feared. After weeks of debate, the Council voted to accept. The announcement was made across the galaxy. The Galactic Council, the oldest and most powerful organization in known space, had formally recognized a species that had been its member just 5 years before. The message was clear. The old order was ending, and something new was being born. On Station Alpha, Sam and watched the broadcast together. We did it, said quietly. We actually did it. Sam shook his head. We took the first step. The road ahead is still long and there will be more challenges, but yes, today is a good day. Outside the window, a ship docked at the station. Its delegation was the first of many who would come to discuss the future. And for the first time in 300 years, humanity faced that future on its own terms. 20 years had passed since the day humanity left the Galactic Council. In that time, the galaxy had become something its oldest inhabitants would not have recognized. The Council still existed, but it was a shadow of what it had been. More than half of its original members had left to pursue their own paths. Some had joined the growing network of free associations that humanity had helped create. Others had simply walked away, tired of rules that served only the powerful. The remained, but their influence had faded. High Chancellor had died 3 years after recognizing human independence, his heart broken by what he saw as the collapse of everything he had built. His successors were younger and more practical. They understood that the old ways were gone and that survival required adaptation. They had become humanity's closest partners. Their scientists worked with human researchers on projects that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Together, They had developed new methods of travel that made the old ships look like toys. They had found ways to extend life, cure diseases, and understand the universe in ways that previous generations had only dreamed about. They had joined the human sovereignty as full partners. Their industrial capacity had helped build a fleet that now numbered over 100,000 ships. Their people lived on human worlds, and humans lived on theirs. The two species had discovered that despite their differences, they shared a common desire for freedom and fairness. On the colony world of New Providence, an old man sat on the porch of a small house and watched the sunset. The sky was purple and gold, colors that Earth had never known. 3 moons hung on the horizon, each one a different size and shade. Sam was 83 years old. His hair was white, and his hands shook slightly when he lifted his cup of tea. But his mind was still sharp, and his eyes still saw clearly. A vehicle landed nearby, and a woman stepped out. She was in her 50s now, her brown hair streaked with gray, but she moved with the energy of someone much younger. Sam said, smiling, "It has been too long." Ambassador climbed the steps to the porch and sat in the chair beside him. 3 months. Sorry, Sam. Things have been busy. They always are. They sat in silence for a while, watching the colors change as the sun sank lower. I remember that day in the council chamber, said finally. I remember thinking that we were either going to change history or get ourselves killed. Sam laughed softly. I remember thinking the same thing, but we had no choice, really. The council had made sure of that. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had stayed? If we had kept asking politely and waiting patiently? Sometimes, Sam took a sip of his tea, I think we would still be waiting. The council had no intention of ever letting us grow. They saw us as a threat, even when we were small and weak. They would have found ways to keep us small and weak forever. Nodded. The intelligence reports from those days confirm it. Had plans to restrict human technology even further. He wanted to reduce our population, limit our settlements, turn us into a species that could never challenge anyone. And now look at us. Sam gestured at the sky where stars were beginning to appear. 40 colony worlds, partnerships with dozens of species, exploration ships traveling farther than anyone has gone before. We did not just survive, we thrived. In the capital city of Earth, President Chris prepared for a ceremony that had been 20 years in the making. He was a young leader, only 45 years old, but he understood the weight of the moment. The memorial stood in the center of the city, a simple structure of white stone that caught the light in beautiful ways. It was surrounded by gardens where trees from 100 different worlds grew side by side. Thousands of people had gathered for the unveiling. Humans stood next to. Crystals floated above the crowd. Representatives of species that had once dismissed humanity as irrelevant now waited quietly to pay their respects. Stepped up to the podium and looked out at the faces before him. 20 years ago, he began, a small group of people made a decision that changed the course of history. They decided that humanity would no longer ask permission to exist. They decided that we would forge our own path among the stars. They decided that freedom was worth any risk. He paused, letting his words settle over the crowd. Many of those people are no longer with us. President Gibson died 8 years ago. Admiral Caldwell passed away last spring. Dr. Ben Torres and his daughter have both gone to whatever waits beyond this life. They gave everything they had so that we could stand here today. Behind him, a curtain fell away, revealing the inscription carved into the memorial's base. They told us to wait. We chose to walk. This memorial is not just for the leaders whose names we know, continued. It is for every scientist who worked in secret laboratories, every worker who built ships in hidden facilities, every soldier who trained for a war we hoped would never come, every citizen who kept the faith when hope seemed foolish. A diplomat standing near the front made a gesture of respect that meant deep honor among his people. Today, we face a galaxy that our ancestors could not have imagined. We have partners and friends among species that once looked down on us. We have achieved things that were supposed to be impossible. We have proven that potential, when allowed to grow, can change everything. On New Providence, Sam watched the ceremony on a small screen. The sound of his voice carried across the millions of miles between them. But let us not forget the lesson of those early days, said. Freedom is never given, it must be claimed. Respect is never automatic, it must be earned. And peace is never permanent, it must be protected. Sam nodded slowly. He understands, good. He will need that understanding in the years ahead. Do you think there will be more trouble? Asked. There is always more trouble. The universe does not stop presenting challenges just because you have overcome the last one, but I believe that humanity is ready. We have learned to stand on our own feet. We have learned to work with others without losing ourselves. We have learned that strength and kindness are not opposites. The ceremony continued on the screen. People placed flowers and tokens at the base of the memorial. Music played, soft and respectful. Somewhere, a child laughed, and the sound echoed across the crowd like a promise. What about you, Sam? Asked. What will you do now? The old man smiled and looked up at the darkening sky. Stars filled the heavens, more stars than any human had seen from Earth's surface, each one a sun around which new wonders waited. I think I will sit here and watch the universe for a while longer. It is a very interesting place, and I have grown quite fond of it. Reached over and took his hand. They sat together as night fell over New Providence, two old friends who had helped change history, now content to watch as a new generation carried the work forward. Across the galaxy, species that had once been held back looked at humanity's example and dreamed of their own futures. The old order was fading. The new order was still taking shape. But one thing was certain. The day humanity left the Galactic Council was the day the universe held its breath. And what came after was something no one had predicted. Hope. Not just for humanity, but for every species that had ever been told to wait their turn, to accept their place, to stop reaching for the stars. Humanity had shown them that it was possible to break free. And that was a gift that would keep giving for generations to come. The end.